Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. This is your host, Amina Ahmed, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Welcome back to Next Gen, where we speak with young people on the issues of our world today. Today's topic is actually one that Next Gen and Muslim Network TV as a network hopes to tackle. The issue of having no or misrepresentation here in the United States. With over 4 million Muslims in our population, we still don't have adequate representation. But today's episode is also even more exciting because we have with us Fatima Zaidi. Fatima was actually with us on the first ever episode of Next Gen. She's a journalist, an activist, an advocate, and a great friend of mine as well. Fatima Zaidi is a senior at DePaul University studying journalism and will be pursuing a career in broadcasting and international correspondence after obtaining her bachelor's. She currently writes for the institution's student-led newspaper, the DePaulia, and her work has been featured elsewhere as well as the award-winning magazine 14 East. She has written for that. Thank you, Fatima, for being here with us today. Previously, we talked about your activism and your advocacy, but today let's focus on your journalism and how you, as a Muslim woman, are breaking barriers.
Thank you so much for having me today, Amina. This is a hugely important topic to not only discuss within academic institutions, but also within newsrooms as well. So I am very much looking forward to sharing my journey, my insights, and my advice on how we can encourage women within our own community and hopefully on a national level of encouraging representation in mainstream media.
Right. So Fatima, your journey, right? Let's start with that. So how, did you get into journalism? What sparked your interest in journalism?
So when I talk about my journey with people, I always tell them that we need to go way back in time. And what I mean by going back way back in time, I mean going back to the eighth grade. And the reason why I say that is because I did not want to be a journalist when I was growing up. I actually wanted to be a number of things, but during the time when my interest for journalism slowly started to blossom, I actually wanted to become a neurosurgeon, which now that, a lot of individuals, when I talk to them, they're like, I could never see you becoming a doctor. And I was like, I don't blame you. I could never see myself doing that either. But nevertheless, I was always actually encouraged by people within the South Asian community to rush my progress when it came to figuring out what it was that I wanted to do. And surprisingly, I am writing a piece about this actually. And by the eighth grade, I did started feeling a little bit of pressure that, you know what, medicine is clearly not for me. So what am I going to do? So when I got into high school, freshman year, my English teacher actually was a huge encourager and cultivator when it came to essay writing and writing narrative pieces and getting into the whole arena of literature, actually. So with that encouragement, I was then placed into an honors class in sophomore year. And then my writing continued to progress. I wrote on a ton of very critical issues, such as, prisoners, should they be given the right to vote or not when they are serving their sentence? So I was always the one that wanted to go above and beyond and report on critical issues just to get feedback to see how I was doing in my writing. Then I got into junior year, and that is when I started reading Times Magazine and the New York Times and BBC World News and CNN International News. And that's when I sort of saw a pattern beginning with myself, where every time I would go on a news website, I would instantly be drawn to what is happening on an international level in the world. Just because, it's very easy for me to, like have easy access to what is happening in the United States, what is happening at a local level, what is happening in different states, what are the major headlines for the week or for the day. But I was always more curious to know, what about underreported communities? What about underreported, stories that are out there that I have no idea about? I wanted to make that a priority for me when it came to surfing the web for news stories. And that's how my passion for international news reporting really began. So when I was a senior, in my last year of high school, I had pretty much come to the conclusion that journalism was what I wanted to do. And I got involved with my school newspaper, very, very quickly became the editor for that. And once again, I pushed for international news stories to be at the forefront of what students could write about. And I visibly noticed that, students had a lot of fun writing about, sports stories from like the NBA and the NFL and, like all of those major sports organizations, and writing about arts and lifestyle, and writing about politics, and writing about humanitarian issues, as opposed to just keeping them very limited in the arena of just writing about school related events. Yes. And then after that, when I told my parents that I wanted to become a journalist, I say, and I consider myself to actually be one of the lucky people where I have full support from my parents and from my immediate family here in Chicago, from my extended family nationwide, and from my family internationally as well, in India specifically. Everyone has been extremely supportive of me, has been extremely motivating and encouraging, and I've had relatives in India who have written for different publications in India. They were reaching out to me and they were giving me tips and advice on what I could do if I, like I said, like you mentioned, if I ever wanted to do international correspondence down the line. But that wasn't the response that I received from a large majority of the Muslim community here in Chicago when I first told them that I wanted to go into journalism. And while now that there are a lot of people that tell me, oh, you're an inspiration for my child, you're an inspiration for so many Muslim youth, I love the work that you're doing, you make me feel so proud, and all of that, that wasn't the response like 4 or 5 years ago. Back then, people would very bluntly tell me that I would never be successful in this profession. People would bring up the fact that, who's going to look after your kids when you get married? Who's going to look after your husband? Who's going to look after your parents? You're going to be traveling constantly. What life is that like for a woman? And that's the thing that irked me a lot in their responses, is that the common trend that I noticed is that, South Asian people in Chicago, they would always tell me that this is not a suitable career for a woman. Going to the newsroom in the early hours of the morning and sometimes coming back very late at night. What kind of life is this for you? Why do you want to burn yourself out? Why do you want to be on TV all the time? And the thing is that if you think that journalism is simply sitting in front of a camera, interviewing people, writing down stories, taking notes, there is so much more than that I'm actually very upset that people do not know about. First of all, there is this whole thing that, journalists are at the front lines, which means there is an increased risk in sexual assault and kidnapping and arrest and any sort of abuse or any sort of violence. There has been a large number of journalists in 2018 that were actually killed in accidental crossfire when they were covering riots and protests overseas. So it's a very dangerous career. And the thing is that we willingly put ourselves in these situations. We willingly take upon these dangerous assignments. At least some of us journalists, I know I for myself would definitely be taking on a dangerous assignment if it meant that the public I am reaching out to is well and correctly informed about a certain issue. I would much rather have my life be at stake than let a large number of people who follow my writings not be informed or be like completely misled on a certain topic. And that is why, representation is a huge thing, because we need South Asian women, we need Muslim women, we need Asian American journalists, we need Black journalists, we need Indigenous journalists as well, we need Hispanic journalists, we need people from the people of color, from the person of color community to come forward and be given the platforms that white staffs have been given for the past decade and longer in American newsrooms. So that's sort of my journey. And now I am writing for, I am a senior, I'm writing for my institution's newspaper, and I am slowly branching out into writing for several well-known online publications. So although the journey has been pleasant for me as opposed to the journeys of other young Muslim women who have wanted to go on this track, it has not been easy. But the thing is that I have taken all of those negative experiences and using that as a positive encourager to show them that, you know what, if you believe I'm not doing any service to the world, I will gladly prove you wrong by showing you just how noble and majestic this career field can be.
You know, I'm so glad to hear that you have support from your immediate and extended family, but also extremely disappointed, but not really surprised to hear that the Muslim community was not supportive of you. And I think that there is a level of hypocrisy in that, we constantly complain of not having representation, but when other people want to get into the field, we're the first ones to discourage them. But I am proud and happy that you did not listen to any of that. And it paid off. You're here where you are, even after all of that discouragement and difficulty. But Fatima, I want to talk about the issues that you cover. You from high school, from a very young age, you were interested in covering international human rights type of issues. Has that continued on to today? What type of issues do you cover today?
So I've covered on a number of issues for the student publication for DePaul that I have heavily written on international issues for. I have primarily focused on India. And it was just quite surprising because when I was first getting into journalism, and I remember when family members from India would come over, and when we would talk about Indian politics, I would always say, I have no interest. It's too confusing. I really don't want to know what's going on. But now that obviously I'm doing research, I'm talking to the people, I'm writing stories about it, I have developed a very, big interest for it. So I've written about stories in India. I've written about the impacts of COVID in India. I'm going to be writing about the farmers' protests in India again. I've also written stories about Myanmar. I've written stories about the Uyghur genocide. I have reached out to people who are Uyghur, listened to their firsthand testimonies. I have written briefings about the issues in Palestine. So I've traveled all over the world in terms of reporting on different news stories. And now an upcoming piece for myself is obviously going to be reporting on the hijab ban that is established in France. So I really don't like to limit myself when it comes to writing about different political or humanitarian issues that are occurring around the world. In fact, if I find a particular story to be a bit more challenging, I'm kind of like, all right, well, push yourself a little bit, see who are going to be the best sources for this story, or, see how much you can research before reaching out to your sources for additional help. But at the end of the day, my main focus is just to make sure that when I am writing these stories, the voices of the people within that community that I'm reporting on are elevated when it comes to students, when it comes to experts, when it comes to any sort of activist or anyone who is willing to provide comments for the story. And the cardinal rule of journalism, just making sure that everything is being reported in a fair, accurate, truthful manner, and in a very concise manner as well.
So Fatma, we have seen that you cover these multiple issues, that you're able to give voice to a community that may not be written about, that may not be represented. So we appreciate the work that you're doing. Fatma, we'll continue discussing your journalism as well as how we can encourage other young people to get involved as well right after our short break. You're watching us here on Muslim Network TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Apple TV. We'll be right back.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me! No justice! No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world?
You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward.
That lesson learned has brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
Welcome back to NextGen. I'm here with Fatima Zaidi, who is a journalist from Chicago. She's a student, a senior at DePaul, and a wonderful, dynamic writer. She has written about multiple issues, not just in her community and her background where she is from in India, but all across the world. Fatima, what do you say to those who are cynical, who are distrustful of the media, right? As a journalist, you spoke about how you are going out there at many times, putting yourself at risk, making a bunch of sacrifices to do the work that you do. What is your message to people who are distrustful of the media?
First of all, I mean, the people who say the media is fake, I have had certain situations where, such individuals have sent me links to news articles, and I read through it, did my own research. And the minute that I ask for an open dialogue about a topic, they're instantly like, well, there's no point because CNN always produces fake news, or the New York Times is corrupt, or, all these media stories have an agenda. And it's like, well, if there is, then please discuss it with me so I know. And the thing is like I said, no one ever wants to have that sort of dialogue. So, and the thing is that from a journalistic perspective, everyone is going to say the media is fake. I have had instances where people have written comments underneath my pieces about India, where they have said, oh, like she doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, the poor thing, she's being brainwashed by US media and by journalists and all of that. And the advice that we are given is, first of all, the best thing is to ignore it, because this has been a mantra that they have been chanting for years now. And every time we prove them wrong, they suddenly become very angry. They're like, well, I read this news story, or I read that news story, or, well, in my own hometown, like, I saw this. And the thing is that when you say that the media is fake, you are confining yourself to one outlook and one way of thinking. And so it's very upsetting for your own mind, for your own intellectual ability of making decisions, that you are not allowing yourselves to look at a news story from different lenses as well. And that's the first thing we are taught as journalists entering this field, is that when you are reporting on a news story, or when you are researching into a news story, make sure you include opinions from all different sides. So if you are someone that is so rigid and not even wanting to open up and learn about other people's experiences that clearly show you how the media is not fake, how, again, certain journalists put their lives out on the line of making sure that truthful and justful reporting is being brought to the attention of the public, then the best case for you and your own sanity is to literally leave them alone, and to just ignore them. But a message that I will give to you is that, or to anyone who does claim that the media is fake, to be honest, like, I really don't even know what to say, because it's very, like, it's just so appalling to me, and it's so shocking, and it's very upsetting to me. And again, if you are someone who says that, just make sure that you are saying that after collecting knowledge from every single arena of knowledge that has an opinion on this topic. Otherwise, you are no one to necessarily have an opinion on an issue that we are covering that takes days of research, of reaching out to experts, academic experts, political, sociological experts, reaching out to activists who have been at the front lines. If you are someone that just has one inkling of knowledge about a news topic, there's no point in, like, literally chanting like a crow that the media is fake, when you have no intentions of wanting to grow as a person, of trying to see all sides to a news story. So really not much you can do when it comes to those people. And again, the basic rule that we journalists are taught is it's best to just ignore them.
And I'm glad that you're ignoring them for your own sanity. I mean, it is appalling that, people are so easily just dismissing days of research that you said that journalists put into their work. But I'm glad that you are just able to ignore that. Hopefully you continue to do that, and hopefully it doesn't get to you, because I know that you are at times the victim of much hate for the work that you do. So again, thank you for the work that you do, Fatima. But
and another thing that I'll add is that, like, what's really surprising is that these people who say that certain news outlets are fake, they will avidly watch them. just to see
Right,
what the next fake news story is. So it's like,
right.
well, if you think a news outlet is fake, why are you contributing to their profiting and to their traffic and their networking by watching them?
Right. It seems like
But again, I can't blame them because I would much rather than watch CNN and read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal than become a hermit that just watches Fox News. But to each their own, I guess.
right. Fatima, I wanted to actually talk about, before we end here today, we're already short on time. Whenever the first time I spoke to you, time flew by. We had a 15-minute segment and it flew by. And again, here we have a 25-minute segment that is almost coming to an end. But, I support you wholeheartedly, but I want to make sure that that support extends from the Muslim community onto journalists, onto young Muslim women who hope to go into media. How do you hope, what do you think that the Muslim community can do to support people like you?
First of all, I'm going to speak out on for the Muslim community specifically, just because I don't want to speak out on other communities when experiences can be much, much more different. But what I will say is very bluntly and very openly to some of the Muslim members in our community in Chicago, especially and beyond, who have told me not to go into this career field, who have told me that I will not be successful. Stop discouraging your daughters. Stop discouraging the young women of your community. Stop discouraging the future leaders of this world by limiting their experiences and what they can do for the international public by telling them that they can only be successful if they go into STEM majors. That is not the case at all. Like I had mentioned earlier, this career, the minute you put your toes into the large ocean that is journalism, you will be hit in the face by how humble this is, by how majestic it is, by how glorious it is. You are going to be that individual in the community that is going to sit down with the president one day when writing a political news piece. And I can guarantee you, not a lot of other people in your community are going to have that experience. And the thing is that parents, why don't you want your child to go into journalism? Why don't you want your daughter to be the voice for the voiceless? In Islam, isn't that, one of the foundational elements that it teaches us? Isn't that what the grandson of the Prophet teaches us? That those who are silent when others are oppressed are definitely guilty of oppression themselves? Why are you subjecting your children to that? And the thing is that journalism is an ever-growing profession. I have been told by so many people who have no idea about how journalism works. They're like, oh, journalism is losing jobs. Newspapers are, being wiped out. You're not going to have a job in like 5-10 years. What are you going to do? And the thing is that the digital footprint that journalism is slowly leaving behind, when it comes to the emergence of print journalism to online journalism, it is astounding. It is amazing. There are so many opportunities that are opening up. And yes, it is hard, especially when you're someone that does freelance reporting. That journey is very, very troubling and very tiresome, of pitching an idea to different news outlets and, answering a large range of questions that need to be answered to the editors when you're in the process of publishing a piece. And obviously the tiresome efforts of reaching out to different people and, putting together a very compelling news story, data, stats, statistics, all of that stuff. Especially if you are someone that is a multimedia journalist, you are someone that sometimes goes out yourself and takes their own pictures and their own videos. And especially if you're a broadcast journalist, going out there with your own camera, with your own microphone, a one-person camera crew, it is very hard. But the lasting results are amazing. And I say that firsthand because in a very short amount of time, I have spoken to people that I never thought I would ever be able to speak to in my life. I have been blessed with so many opportunities, alhamdulillah, that I know I would not have had the opportunities to accomplish had I been a neurosurgeon or had I been an electrical engineer or whatever. And one of those, opportunities includes being on this show, reaching out to Muslim women, reaching out to the next generation Muslim youth and telling them about my story. I never would have had those chances. And the thing is that going into the whole giving advice and tips on how to get into the field of journalism, I actually have had a lot of young women that have reached out to me and asked, how can I step foot into journalism? My biggest suggestion is just go for it. No hesitations. If you love it, if you enjoy it, if you want to do it, then do it. I am there to help you. If you need sources, I will be here to give you as many contacts as you need, just as alhamdulillah, like you have also helped me on numerous occasions. If you need someone that needs to edit your pieces, I am more than happy in doing so. If you need a support system, if you need someone to confide into because your mental health is at a very low point because you're not receiving that support from your family members, from your community, I will be that support system. I would actually hate to see a young woman with so much potential not even test out the waters of journalism and immediately put her hands up and say, I quit, I can't do it. Then for her to actually go out, scope out the career, see how she likes it, find her arenas of interest, and then be like, okay, maybe I should pursue something else. And the thing is, Amina, I have seen a lot of young women in Chicago who have said, I want to do journalism because I see you doing journalism. And I see how much you're enjoying it, and I see how much fun you're having, and I see your interest for it. But when I ask them, the response is the same. My parents would never allow it. My community would never allow it. And the thing is that when you think about it, when you go into journalism, that community is not even going to matter anymore, to be honest, because then you're going to be the person that's facing off to the entire world. You are going to be going into communities of oppression, of injustice, that have suffered through persecution. You're going to be telling those stories. They are going to be your communities of support when you elevate their voices. So again, the South Asian community will say what the South Asian community wants to say. They live on this principle that, yes, this is an issue that we need to address, but I won't do anything about it. I will make sure my children don't do anything about it, but I do expect you to do something about it. Right. And again, it's a huge, huge unethical way of thinking, and I really am not in favor of this censorship and limitations that unfortunately Muslim women not only in the United States but also worldwide are experiencing within their own respective communities. And to be honest, if you are a Muslim woman that wants to go into journalism, you need to muster up the courage now to break those barriers, because again, like I said, I would hate to see you give up so quickly when you have so much potential. And every woman out there, every single woman from every different racial minority group has the potential of making a difference in the world. And this is the perfect time to do that.
Thank you so much, Fatima. You are incredibly inspiring, as is your work. We hope to hear from you again. I don't think that we could ever have enough Fatima on the show. I really appreciate your words of encouragement to other young Muslim women who probably, maybe looking through into this career, maybe they have also faced difficulties, like you said, from the community, but hopefully through your message, they feel inspired and motivated. Thank you, Fatima. I hope you keep it up. I know you will. I don't need to give you that reminder. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Amina, for having me.
And thank you to our incredible audience for tuning in to today's episode of Next Gen. And until next week, assalamu alaikum. Take care, everyone.